Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Carl's Roller Coaster Podcast. John.
Hello, Carl. How you doing, mate?
Hey,
right?
I'm great. How are you, buddy? You all right?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm so sorry for mucking you around with the timings.
Totally fine. I mean, it worked out just fine because Mike literally messaged me like now saying, hey, can we reschedule? Something's come up.
What a bastard. I know Mike pretty good. I shot him with, doing the Empire State stuff recently. So,
right.
He's a good guy, Mike. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's great. I've only met him last year when I was with Jane's Addiction, and he's a massive Jane's fan. So he came to the show and he was like super thrilled about it. And he's been, Joe Last drums, drum techs for Lombardo, for Dave, and also played with Mike, right?
But also Mike does, he loves Iron Maiden. And he's done some amazing sort of jam sessions with Joe doing Maiden tracks.
Oh, right.
And with Kavos from Gong, he's like seriously good.
Mm-hmm.
1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so I know all those dudes pretty good, but I kind of hope that they form some sort of insane band right there.
Right.
It'd just be so brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I was last now at Steve's in the Bahamas in late January, we basically had this new band together for a minute, which was basically Rude, he's the guitarist for Within Temptation, and Stefan, both guitarists on Within Temptation. I myself am a singer, and Steve obviously bass player, and we're like, okay, let's just come on.
Bring it on. Let's do this. Oh man, I would love to see that, you and Steve,
right,
on the same stage, man. That'd be insane, wouldn't it?
I know.
What were you doing in the Bahamas then?
Just visiting him. We just went to spend some time with him. Yeah, just
fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. He's such a lovely guy, isn't he? He's just
He's I mean, Steve is just out of this world, isn't he? He's just such a down-to-earth person and like real friend, super into his nutrition and vitamins and I mean, it's a good example, I always say, wow, having him as a hero, someone that you can actually, basically think that, wow, that's one of my heroes. It's pretty humbling and it's a good influence because the more you get to know the guy, what he did during the last 50 years basically with Maiden and how he has conducted himself throughout all of those decades. As a person, as an individual, it's just wow.
Yeah, to get to that age, he's gone 60 now, and it's, to get to that age and look as good as he does and be as fit as he is, it's the same can be said for most of Maiden, can't you? Like on stage, they move around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess you kind of have to in many ways because like you, this is for everyone in life really, but like when you like on stage and performing and constantly traveling, if you do not look after your physical health and your mental health, I mean, it's very, especially these guys who had such big massive highs during the 80s when obviously everything was so very different and a lot more decadence around, drugs and women and all of that.
Well, you kind of I think most sensible people sort of get that sort of stuff out the way. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, and a lot of young bands that I work with, who can be sort of quite excessive. Mm-hmm. And it's quite refreshing when you catch up with them sort of 2 years down the road and they're doing good. And, you know what I mean? They kind of did the crazy bit on their first couple of tours. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Biohazard taught me. It was one of my first ever commissions in about 1990 or something like that. And I went on the road with Biohazard just for a few shows for a magazine commission. And they were so into the keeping fit and the vitamins and all the rest of it. I'm not sure if they continued that into their latter years, but, you know, at that time back then, and that kind of taught me a lesson. And I remember sort of Billy and Evan sort of saying, if you want any kind of sort of longevity in this game, you need to look after yourself, you know. And they sort of really taught me that they kind of really looked after themselves, and yeah, you know, and that's the way to stay fit, isn't it, on the road?
Absolutely.
Because it takes its toll, doesn't it? I mean, I've done quite a few tours where, you know, sort of there's been a certain sort of mix of crew and band and stuff, and there's a lot of sort of, you know, temptation to go drinking and a lot of late nights, but it don't half catch up on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the life on the road can be very deceiving in many ways, right? Because it's you're in this bubble, and at that particular time, depending who you're working with, you're very happy because it can be a dream come true, right? I mean, you're on this tour, you're traveling. I mean, you as an example, you know, with the people that you have worked with and traveling with Maiden for like so many years. I mean, it's very easy to kind of get into a very lazy kind of existence when it comes to our personal self-care, because the pizzas are there, the catering is there, the cake is there, you know, the all of the sugary stuff that it's kind of like, I think it's changing a lot when the more bands become successful, and obviously the well-established acts. I mean, catering tends to be a lot healthier these days. The dressing room riders are healthier. But still, it's plentiful of everything. So if you do not pay attention very much, you're gonna end up eating extremely well, but you're gonna put on some weight, and you're not gonna exercise. And at the end of the night, there will be the pizza, the beer, even if having just the one beer. You know, it's like.
And it's your little reward, isn't it? But you're bang on. You know, it's like catering. It's all fast energy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all kind of carbs. I remember sitting there, and one of the younger crew had this massive bowl of spaghetti bolognese with tons of pasta and a side portion of chips crammed on the plate. And he had French bread, and it was like, can you fit any more carbs in your body? You know, but that temptation is totally that. And I fall foul to it time and time again, especially, as you say, at the end of the show, the pizzas arrive in production. You know, I'll grab a quick beer from the band lounge and few slices of pizza, because I'm sitting there doing computer club. Everyone thinks that I'm backstage snorting coke, and you know, that isn't what it's about. You know, I'm sitting at a computer trying to edit 3,500 pictures, culling them down into like an elite 200, and then there'll be an elite dozen that, you know, I fire out to Rod and the band, you know, straight after the show. But to get to that point, it takes a bit of time. You got to, you know, put the cards into your hard drives, back everything up, start importing it, edit the raw file. And while you're doing that, I've got a beer on one side of the computer and a pizza on the other. It's great. So that temptation is terrible.
The calories just keep adding up.
But you just look so well on it. I mean, you've certainly got yourself into a really good regime, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know, for what you do, it's a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, isn't it? As a tour manager.
Yeah, but I mean, I try to more and more. I think that obviously, like you said, I mean, I'm 42, so I mean, I've also been doing been in the music for a little while. So obviously, when you're in your early 20s, on your mid 20s or even the early 30s, I mean, I used to be way more indulgent per se, you know. But nowadays, I mean, I know what really works for myself. But when I say myself, it's just for humans in general. I mean, the discipline of, you know, trying to have a consistent and good sleep, and eating properly, hydrating well, supplementing on the road, just having the discipline of carrying this stuff, because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm going on the road now, I'm not going to have the stuff that I have at home. Well, but then bring it with you. You know what I mean? Like, I do travel myself with a small Samsonite, which I carry my own NutriBullet, and I carry my own vitamins. And some stuff, I get it on the first few shows. I ask, you know, for the runner to grab me some stuff like, I don't know, stuff that I put on my morning smoothie, like flax seeds and chia seeds. And then I get those and I carry with me. And then I try to basically protect myself in the sense of I know what I'm going to be eating and how I'm going to be eating, so I don't fall into the trap of, okay, fine. I mean, I know in the next couple of hours there will be pizza, there will be, stuff like that. So it takes a minute because you obviously, like you said, it's just a reward and it's pretty good at the end of the night. Everybody's tired and you have that.
If it's a good show, it's a bit of a celebration, isn't it?
It is a bit of a celebration, and having that glass of wine and that beer with whatever the food you have, you get. It's just the thing is, it becomes a daily occurrence, reoccurrence. So it's just not very. It's just not very good on the long run,
No,
for your belly especially.
In all seriousness, you should do a book on sort of staying alive, on the road. There's a good friend of mine, Ian Winwood, did a book called Bodies, which is all about mental health. There's a lot of case studies of certain sort of bands and individuals that have really had a rough ride. But it's a brilliant book. Are you still there?
Yeah.
It's a brilliant book, and it's but that's about the mental health, and you should do one about sort of eating healthy, staying healthy on the road, mixed with a few anecdotes. You would probably get one hell of a good book out of that, I think.
You know what? It's funny that you've mentioned that because I've had so many people. Not so many people, but I've had some good close friends in the past. The podcast is actually one way of kind of doing what people suggested to me, because they were like, man, you've got so many friends, why don't you just do something about it, have nice conversations, talk about life, exchange life experiences? Because what happens as well is, at least for me with the podcast thing, was I've known people for a long time, but the moment that you sit here like we are now, we're going to spend like 60 minutes talking to each other without distractions. I mean, you get to know so much better the person, and that's really interesting. I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world that sometimes you're even on the road with these people, sharing the bus, sharing the planes, sharing the hotels, and you just realize that you don't know people that well at all, No,
because when you're working, you're in that thing. I mean, I've left tours for like 10 days, 2 weeks, and then come back, and I've had members of crews sort of say to me, "Oh, I didn't know you'd gone." It's bizarre because everyone's so focused on what you're doing, your own gig, that it's very transient. And it's always a pleasure to see you, Carl. And we always get on really well. But you're totally right. We have a very quick chat, and it's like, what are you up to? What are you doing? Are you doing? And it's always great. But this is nice. So,
it's always a very fast-paced situation that we end up encountering and like seeing each other, and then like. I mean, I always get to see you when you're working as well, so you're always running around with your camera.
God. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, when I'm shooting a Maiden show, I think most people just think I mince around with a camera and I'm like high-fiving people and all the rest of it. But, from the previous show that I've shot, the next show I come up with a plan. So it's kind of that, I'll find great angles to shoot at. There is a point to what I'm saying here. But, I'll find good angles and all the rest of it. And I'll make a note the next night. I'll shoot from here. I won't shoot from here because it was bad. And I have an action plan. And everything is choreography. So, I have the set list and I work my way through it. So a lot of times when I bump into people and they're like, hey, McMurtrie, it's kind of, I'll go, hey, how you doing? But in the back of my mind, I know that I've got like 45 seconds to get from where I've bumped into this person to where I need to be to get the next sort of pyro shot or the next, drape that's coming in. So, I think I was at the O2 and I was shooting that, and I bumped into, funny enough, Joe Lazarus up on about the third floor at the O2. And we had so much to talk about together because there was a few things we were working on. And I said, listen, I just can't talk. I've got to be over here. I just had to like sort of race away. But yeah, it's very true. Yeah. There's always an agenda, isn't there?
There is always, and it's like, I mean, it happens to me as well. I mean, people come, like, especially friends that are not in the music business or in particular on the touring business. And then they're just like, hey, I'm getting to the venue. Can we just meet and have a beer? And I'm like, Do you know what I do for a living?
Yeah, exactly.
Like 15 minutes before showtime, yeah, sure, I'm gonna step out now and go have a beer. And you kind of have to be sensitive as well, because people sometimes they take those things very, on a personal level, and I always make the case with when I have like guests at shows that I'm working on, people that are coming to see obviously the show that I'm working on, but also see me, because again, we're constantly on the road, and it's very good when you get to play, like in London, for instance, that you get to see familiar faces. It's very refreshing. But I always explain to people, say, listen, I am working, and my work is quite demanding, so forgive me if I do not.
It's tough because you have friends that get it. You have friends that totally get it because they're in the industry and they totally understand. So when you catch up, it is just, we're doing the bullet points and, arrangements for later and stuff like that. But then you get other friends that, are party animals and don't get it. They just think, they think there's a certain way they should be acting when they get backstage. So it's like, I've got to be half drunk. I've got to be searching more beer or drugs.
Well,
it's like, and when you're working, it's like these sort of people are just a liability.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit guarded now about who I let into the inner sanctum sometimes.
Absolutely. You're so right.
Because that you've got Rod on the other end of the phone, or Shaki from Maiden Management, wanting something or needing you to be somewhere urgently. And if you're with someone who's just being crazy, it's just like, yeah.
Well, I've learned my lesson in that regard in not a very good way. I'm not going to mention the artist, but many years ago, I was very close to getting to know the artist quite well. So I was getting triple A's for all the shows, and then in one of the occasions I was traveling, and I had a couple of girls that I've only just met at a festival, and they were in town, and I said, hey, listen, you absolutely, you can come for the show, no problem. I can get you on the guest list. And as fate would have it, when I arrived at the venue with those two girls, the tour manager of the band at the time came to me and said, hey, Carl, here's your pass, and your friends, they've got tickets as well. But the guy looked at me and said, do you want to give them all access as well? And I didn't want to, with the two girls next to me, to say, no. You know what I mean? Like, that would be a bit of an awkward situation. So I said, yeah, that's fine. But it turns out that it was an absolute fucking nightmare, because these women, they decided it was a great idea to drink the band's beer from their dressing rooms while they were on stage, that eat pizza from the crew in the end of the show, talk bad about it was an absolute imagine a real life nightmare for somebody that works in the industry, and because people are trusting you, and then you're granting this full access to a couple of random chicks that you know nothing about. But it never occurred to me
and
that
it all comes back on you, doesn't it?
It does, 100%.
That liability is going to come back on you. So you've got to kind of watch that. I think Maiden have always got it quite well, because they have areas which are designed for, friends and family and hospitality. Yeah. And I know when they do the O2, I think, they had a whole bowling alley they hired. It was
fantastic,
I think it was about 1,500 people on the guest list.
Yeah, crazy.
It's insane. But they know what they're doing. They know that if that amount of people are going to swarm to send on backstage, everything's going to break. So it's you just put them in an area which they've got beer, they've got great food, they're looked after, the band will be coming in, that's a good way of doing it, isn't it? And that means the likes of me and you can just get on with our jobs without someone going, you do the photos, which I've had a few times, I've come into our sort of video production photography room, and we're having to entertain someone that I barely know, you know, and they're like, what does this do? What does that do? Which is fine when you're not busy, but as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I loved like how we rolled into the conversation, but let me just backtrack a little bit and tap into your upbringing and how was, where were you born and how did photography get into your life? And if you had any kind of like family influence on your, career, basically.
Well, I'm just outside London. I'm kind of south of London. I'm in Epsom. And I'm lucky enough that a lot of my time I spend in Cornwall when I'm not away. But Epsom, that sort of area, it's just south of London. It's 30 minutes into town by train. So it's a good location, good place to be. But as far as photography goes, it was I've got two older brothers. My oldest brother had a good friend who was into photography, quite nerdy, had a dark room. And he basically showed me how, film photography worked, how to develop film, how to print film. And for me, that was just, an instant sort of magic to me. It was brilliant. And I think everybody goes through life, don't they? You don't know where you're going to go, what you're going to do. But as soon as I discovered photography, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Because at the time I was at sort of art school doing graphic design. And although I kind of enjoyed that, I soon realised that there were better artists than me. And I soon realised that as far as photography goes, I was quite good at composition and framing and bringing things together. So I made a switcheroony. I kind of switched from graphic design to photography. And that was kind of, I knew that was drawing me, and I knew that at the time I wasn't good at it, but I knew I could get good at this. And many people used to say to me I had a really good eye for it and stuff. So at that stage I was at art school, into heavy metal, totally into thrash metal. I used to play guitar. All my friends were all in bands, and I was the only one with a camera that could take photos, because obviously we take it for granted now, don't we? We've all got our phones, and as far as photography goes, so I was shooting bands in using car headlights and all kinds of creative weird things, but getting quite good photos for it. And then I had a lecture at art school where they were just kind of writing me off because, they said you should have done photography, you shouldn't have done graphic design, but, you're okay at graphic design. But I had a lecture about, if you're going to be a photographer, you need to specialise. You need to find something that floats your boat. There are a lot of photographers that do really well out of being a sort of an all-rounder. But if you wanted to make a sort of career out of it, you would need to actually sort of specialise. And that lecturer asked me, what are your interests? And my only interests were pretty much heavy metal and playing guitar and music.
Excellent.
It was funny. And he raised his eyebrow and he sort of said to me, well, music photography is a very competitive industry. It's doubtful you would make a career in that. And I went to, and this story sounds like I'm making it up because this is just nuts. About 3 days later, I went to see Iron Maiden on the Seventh Son tour at Hammersmith Odeon.
Oh, wow.
And I bumped into, it wasn't Ross Halfin, I think it was a guy, Ray Palmer. He was a photographer on Kerrang. He was coming out the backstage door. And I could see he had all camera gear. And I just asked him about the gig. And I said, is it a good gig? Is it hard to get into? And he basically said to me, don't do it. It's the worst job in the world. It's awful. You'll hate it. And I don't know whether he was just protecting his own, but he kind of stopped the conversation to say, well, look, I've got to go because I'm getting a flight to LA tomorrow. So I thought, well, that can't be that bad. And I was a big fan of traveling and all the rest of it. So from that point, I thought, wow, I've done these band shots for local bands and bands that I knew. So, I could carve a path into it. But then the first stumbling block was, I needed to photograph big bands. And I sort of inquired into how you go about it. And it's basically, obviously, you need a photo pass, but you need some sort of credentials to get a photo pass. And that's kind of where I hit a brick wall. And it was like, well, that's not going to happen, is it? I'm not going to be able to. And it came at a time when all of my friends were going to see Ozzy Osbourne at Hammersmith Odeon. For some reason or other, I didn't have a ticket, and I was like, "Oh man, that would have been great. I'd love to have gone." And then in this moment of madness, I called up the record label. I think it was EMI back at the time, and asked for the press office. And a really sort of short-tempered woman answered the phone. And I said, "Hi, I want a photo pass for Ozzy Osbourne." And she just said, "This is the fax number, fax in your request," and put the phone down on me. And I thought, oh, God. So I made up some fake headed notepaper for a magazine that I completely made up called Rock. Didn't exist at all. And faxed it through with it typed out on it saying, "We need a photo pass. This is Rock Journal magazine. Need a photo pass for Ozzy Osbourne and Hammersmith Odeon." And about 3 minutes later, a fax came back saying that your photo pass will be on the guest.
Oh, wow.
The guest list, and you can enter through the backstage entrance, and there will be a bar before the show.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, it's that easy. And I blagged it. So, I went there with 2 rolls of film. And it was just the most defining moment of my life. It was like in the pit, and the coming on music for Ozzy Osbourne, all the smoke clears, Ozzy comes out of the smoke. And the first thing he does is just come straight up in front of my camera and sticks his tongue out and sort of rolls his eyes back in his head, and like his hands are kind of outstretched. And I was like, holy shit, this is insane. Because, I'd been to gigs and you're like, you're admiring the artist on stage, but he was doing that for my camera. And then Zakk Wylde came up to the front of the stage with this is when Zakk was like bare-chested, muscular, beautiful hair. Really, he must have only been about 20 at the time, 21. And just started, throwing his hair back and throwing shapes. And it was perfectly lit in front of me. Wow. And I just snapped away. And it was like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And then there was 3 songs, kicked out. And I remember just sitting on the steps outside Hammersmith Odeon. The gig was still going, and I could have gone back in. But I just sat on the steps, just in a kind of state of shock that this just happened. It was just the most exciting thing I'd ever experienced in my life. And the best bit about it was that I got to capture it on film. So, I can look back at those shots. Mm-hmm. And I remember the sensation that I got. I mean, that's the power of photography, isn't it? It's, you're recording history, but you're recording emotions, and that's the bit I love.
Absolutely.
But it was just incredible. And without blowing my own trumpet, I did something right at that first show. I shot tons of shows after that, and all my photos were rubbish, But that one show, because that first big show that I'd shot, it worked. It kind of taught me that you can do this, mm-hmm. But you've obviously got to, whatever you did that night, you did right, but you need to work out what you did that night that was so right. And it took me quite a few concerts after that to really work out how to, operate the camera in a good way and react to how you deal with low light or a lot of light. But that was my defining moment, making up a fake magazine, getting into Ozzy Osbourne, and after that, I did just huge shows. I think I shot every single metal act on the planet over the next sort of 5 years. I did my own sort of apprenticeship, but it was kind of a self sort of managed, so I was shooting Metallica, Megadeth, Scorpions, Wasp, David Bowie, The Stones,
Wow.
I blagged just massive gigs, and it was all from a fake magazine, Rock Journal.
So that worked. That kept on working. You kept on requesting.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. It just kept going. And I would have record company PR saying, "Oh, we love Rock Journal." And I'm on the phone just pissing myself laughing that this is the biggest blag ever. But as there's certain individuals in the record industry, not all of them, we all have a lot of good friends, but there are certain individuals that are kind of playing an act, and
mm-hmm.
I remember saying, I work for Rock Journal, and when they would say, "Oh, we love that magazine," you just think, you're so full of shit, because this magazine, I mean, to be fair, I was more full of shit than anybody, I guess, because I made up this thing, but you know, it worked. It was a means to an end because it was a real sort of catch-22. How do you get a photo pass without working for an established magazine? How do you work for an established magazine? You need a portfolio of established acts to prove that you can, you know, shoot the big shows.
Of course.
So, you know, I had to do it. And I think in this day and age, we should have some sort of... not an internship, but we should have some sort of encouragement for the younger generation to come in and shoot music, because at the moment it's quite hard to get into in the sense because you're not paid for it anymore, you know, on the lower levels, you know, if you're coming into that, you're not really making any money. So we should be encouraging, you know, people to come in and learn the trade. You know, because it's a tough industry at the minute, because photographic gear has not got any cheaper. It is so expensive. And if I was just coming into the industry now, it's like, how do you do it?
I know. I was going to ask you because it's similar to the recorded music music industry itself, right? Like photography back in the days before digital used to be in certain ways and dare I say more iconic in ways. Whereas nowadays, anyone with an iPhone can record in 4K, shoot amazing stuff, edit on the go, have digital material available. So, I mean, what in this time and age, like yourself, like a professional photographer like yourself, what, like, I mean, I think what you're saying now, where you kind of like started the segue is to try and like figure out how to maintain this career alive for people that are starting now, for a 20-year-old picking up the camera now. I mean, how can they, well, try and make a living out of it? Because it's kind of like, you know, in many ways like being a musician these days. I mean, you know, there are not that many places to play a rock gig anymore, you know, whereas before, you know, there were gigs at every other corner of the street, you know.
A lot of similarities to musicians, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think musicians are probably being ripped off more than, say, photographers are, because, you know, as photographers, we can protect our rights, you know, without going down a different rabbit hole. Years ago, we used to syndicate through agencies. So anything you shot, you know, that was for a commission or a magazine and you own the rights to, after usually about sort of 6 months or a year, you can syndicate your images. You know, you could go through agencies, but, you know, that market has gone now. That doesn't exist. It really doesn't. But, you know, new photographers coming into the industry, publishing is on its knees, you know, and they'll take you on, but you're not really going to be, you know, earning the money that you used to earn. You know, my first commission on Metal Hammer, I think I got paid something like about £650, and it was Sex Pistols at Finsbury Park, you know, and in 96. And it was the best day out ever, but I got paid really well for it, you know, and it was like, wow, okay, this is sustainable. But now, you know, to do that, you'd be lucky if they, you know, a magazine would offer you £150 to do something like that. And which is fine if you're just a massive fan of the music and it's your hobby. But if you've invested sort of £30,000 in a camera equipment, that doesn't cut it. You know, it really doesn't. So it's a different rabbit hole to go down. But I think things are tough in the photography world in a similar way as musicians, definitely.
Do you think that because I mean, like, everything that you just said, like back in the day, how old were you actually when you photographed that Aussie gig?
I was 18.
So there you go. So you were 18 and you found a way to kind of like get into that gig to take the photographs and you kept on showing up. And then back in the day, I presume you could just then go back to magazines and just try to sell the pictures to them. Was that the process they would?
Well, weirdly, I could have done, but my intention was to. I mean, it was really well focused. Looking back on it, my intention was just to build a portfolio. That was, you know, without being big-headed. You know, if you're going to go to a publisher, you're going to go to a picture editor. You can go again, but you've really got one stab at it. You know, it's like, you know, if you go to a big magazine, you know, they'll send you away and say, come back in a few years' time. But I wanted to just keep myself in the shadows and build this ridiculous portfolio. So when I went to my first picture editor, and just showed them the portfolio. The only thing they could say was wow, because it was absolute gold. You know, behind the scenes, there's thousands and thousands of shots that weren't. But, you know, you have a portfolio that has 30 pictures in it, and every single one is phenomenal. So, where I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, no, that's great. That's great. I mean, earlier, I'm going to go back a little bit now, because you've mentioned about preparation and prepping for photo shoots, and how you kind of like touched on the subject of preparation, basically, for when you're like going into a Maiden gig, and then we just kind of like talked about people then stopping you for high five you. But I mean, what's like the process for you? For like, I mean, when you look at, I don't know, just as an example, but like your the portrait pictures that you take, like, I mean, they differ so much, like one from another. Like, I mean, you from Slipknot to what you did with Avenged Sevenfold and the Foo Fighters, even. I mean, they are very, specific and different. You know, they don't follow like it's not like you're just showing up and doing the same old formula that worked before. You know, so what's the general prep research, perhaps, that you undergo before shooting a client?
Yeah, as far as portraits, you know, it is bespoke to the artist. You know, you're trying to tell a story. You're trying to tell who they are, what kind of character they are, and tell a story. If the album's got a theme running to it, you know, and I will spend a long time sort of researching the band and the artist and work things out. And then you just get to a point where you've shot the portrait already in your head. You know exactly how this is gonna shoot. So, you know, and you don't stop until you get that shot that you've already taken in your head on the portrait session, which is kind of bizarre. But, you know, a lot of my stuff is for magazine covers and promo. So, you know, it's got to have an impact. I don't think I've ever been one of those photographers that is just about, you know, photographing someone against a wall and that's it. I mean, I love the documentary photography where you're really capturing the character of people, and, you know, I love all of that. But, you know, the formal portrait stuff is great when you've really calculated what you're going to do. Either it's a location or it's a special effect, or, you know. So, yeah, a lot of the times I've got it all in my head. Whereas live, you know, a lot of live photographers will say, well, you just turn up, don't you? And you photograph what's there. But especially with Iron Maiden, I'm trying to illustrate the show. And I'm trying to illustrate it in the best possible way that you can. You know, so if there's certain elements of that show that happen, I've got a photograph, say, Adrian playing a guitar solo. I'm trying to complement that with the main stage set that he's got behind. I'm trying to find angles where it isn't just a great shot of Adrian playing a guitar solo. It's a shot with the composition of Teotihuacan behind him and the stage set and the structures, knowing when the pyro's going to fire and how that's going to affect how the stage set looks. And it's the same for each individual member of the band and for the whole stage show and for Eddie. So before, you know, we'll start a tour, we'll have production rehearsals. So there'll be a whole rehearsal where the band will show up and they'll get the run through of how the show's going to work, and they can work out their timings. But it's a chance for me to sit there and I will just make endless notes about, you know, where this Spitfire goes to, you know, what kind of wide angle lenses, what it's going to be like shooting from front of house, and can I shoot this prop from above? Can I get access to side stage when they're bringing in huge sort of props and things? What's the pyro timing? So before a tour starts, they're all the kind of notes that I take. And then when the tour starts, it's a totally different thing, because you're trying to sort of take those notes and work them into the live show and work out how you. So the concentration I have is quite funny, because I will high five fans. I love speaking to the Maiden fans because they're the best. But, you know, a lot of times they say, God, you know, you really concentrate, don't you? And it's like, yeah, I really do, because I'm constantly thinking ahead. That I can shoot this bit, and then I can shoot that bit, and then I can shoot the walk on Eddie. And then, you know, after shows, I'll have meetings with Rob Coleman, the LD for Iron Maiden, who does the lighting. We'll go through shots and I'll talk about, and, you know, I can be a real pain in the ass for him because I will talk about oversaturation, which is another rabbit hole we can go down about the difference between tungsten lighting and LED lighting. You know, there's a hell of a lot of light that comes out the LED lights that the human eye can't detect. It's frigging pointless, the amount of saturation in those things. And, you know, I ask for certain elements of colours to be toned down, but toned down to the point that the human eye won't perceive any change whatsoever. But for me to photograph it, it is possible. You know, and there's a lot of that going on, and balancing the follow spotlights with the lightings on stage, and you know, there's a lot of sort of scratching of heads after the first couple of shows. That how can we make this better for me? You know, and obviously Rob, the LD, it's all about him you know, lighting the show. He doesn't need me going, is there any way that you could raise the follow spot, you know, on this? You know, and he humours me really nicely. So sometimes, you know, changes could be made, and you know, but there's and then there's the edit. You know, it's after the show you're editing and you're making notes, and you're just constantly either crossing out "do not shoot here again" at this position, or that was TV gold and you could shoot there again. And if you did something slightly different, you'd probably get an even better shot that you got that night. You know, so it's all stuff like that I have in my mind. And so there's a lot of prep.
There's a lot of work that goes. I mean, obviously, like even for myself now, hearing you, listening to you, it's like you mentioned some bits like that. People, obviously, even for people like myself that work in the industry and work with photographers and filmmakers and people like that, there's so much that goes into the job that, like, the vast majority of the people will never really comprehend. They will see you with the camera out there and they think that's exactly what you just said in the beginning. They just turn up with the camera, say hello to people, take a few shots, and that's that. Backstage to edit a few pictures and have a line of cocaine and drink some beer.
Exactly. But I also do remote camera work as well, which is that was just brilliant when I first started doing that. It's basically, you know, the sports photographers that shoot football and shoot the goal lines. Yeah. They have remote cameras that they'll stick in the goal. So as they're shooting on their main camera, you know, 100 yards further down the pitch, as they see the player going towards the goal, as long as they keep shooting, their camera looking the other way and the goal will keep shooting too. Oh, wow. And that's the way, so I kind of adopted that technology into, you know, sort of, I normally shoot with about 2 cameras, and I've got 2 other cameras that I shoot with remote. So you have digital sort of remotes that fire on my main camera, which triggers the other camera. So I can put cameras in the lighting rig, and also, you know, sort of on the stage set, looking out at the band and at the crowd. Because obviously, you know, I don't agree with the whole walking out on stage and interrupting a performer. You know, I'll do it at the end of the show. I don't mind that. And also, Bruce just moves around at such speeds that, you know, he would run you over if you kind of walked out on stage. So, you know, it's quite nice that I can put a remote camera on the stage looking out, and I get a different angle. But it just means that you've got double the amount of editing afterwards. So you have to kind of skim through those and find the key shots and stuff. But it's a good way of being everywhere when you can't be everywhere. So
yeah.
I mean, Rock in Rio. You were at Rock in Rio, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And that was great because I knew that the money shot for Rock in Rio would be up one of the towers. There's like 4 towers, isn't there? On the
you went all the way up there, didn't you?
Yeah. I got rigged up with. I had to put a harness on and everything pre-show. Wow. And then went up to the top of the towers, bolted the camera off, turned all the camera on, turned on the remotes and all the rest of it, and then had to come back down again.
That must have been a bit scary.
It's insane. Yeah, it was absolutely insane.
But what a view. What a view from up there.
Yeah, exactly. But it just meant that mid-show, I wouldn't have the time to climb up there, get a great shot of the pyros going off, and then climb back down. And of course. You know, Eddie coming on and fighting with Bruce. So, yeah, you put a remote camera up, and it's perfect. And I think I paid someone a few dollars to go up and get it at the end of the night. It was like, flat out, would you? But I once did a setup in Mexico City on some really rickety old stadium, and one of the local maintenance guys took me up there, and he just pointed to, if you want your camera there, put it on the lip there, but I'm not going to go on there because it is an old stadium, it's rickety, so I had to, on my hands and knees, sort of.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and then the wind sort of started up. And I just thought, this is insane. And I bolted the camera, and I vividly remember my hands were shaking when I was bolting off the camera and setting all the settings on the camera, thinking this is the most. And there was no safety harness, no health and safety.
Wow.
And then at the end of the night, I paid someone $100, a local Mexican, to go up and get it because it was dark. I just thought it was bad enough when it was daylight.
Yeah.
To go up in the dark, I will die. And that was the best $100 I ever spent. Actually, he came back. It's great. So it's one thing putting these remote cameras in strange places, but it's the fact you have to then retrieve
it in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So,
I mean, those are the things that people don't get to hear about, right? I mean, it's
true.
The lengths that you go in order to capture that moment in time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's. Do you think that one day you're gonna get, like, for example, all those films from the 80s, that all of those bands that you shot? I mean, you're gonna, because that book that you did for many years ago, the Flight 666 book, that's so beautiful. That's such an incredible, like, I mean,
thank you.
It's I honestly, I remember when I got it, and I got it back then when it was released, and it was, I actually can see it from where I'm seated right now. It's just on my shelf. It's such a beautiful like book, and the pictures and it's just it's very tasty. It's
thank you.
Quality, really is. And
when I remember. Yeah.
I was just going to say that, like, if at any one time you think that maybe you could put something together, that you would, I don't know, like your personal portfolio per se, your career in a book with, like, the best shots of, because like you said, I mean, I didn't even know that you shot like David Bowie. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's wow. That's one of the artists that I didn't get to see it ever live. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, there is every intention to do a book. It's just kind of life gets in the way. It's like when I did the 666 book, that was just such a colossal amount of work. And I had so much sort of on my shoulders, in the sense that I'd kind of not persuaded Rod Smallwood. I'd kind of spoken to Rod when we first did the first plane tour, saying we should do a book, And he said, well, let's see what we get. And then it was going into 2009. It was kind of, Rod was quite encouraging about, you should do a book. And then 2011 we did it. But I knew that, I was so grateful for Rod, saying, let's do this. You can do a book. So I didn't want to let him down. I didn't want to let the band down. And I knew that if I did a book that wasn't up to par, the fans would have just hung me, And originally the designers that we had from the publisher, they thought it was just going to be this coffee table book, and it was going to be designed within a week and a half. And it ended up taking sort of three months to put together.
Wow.
Yeah. But I remember being a teenager reading Qmagazine, and, I used to love that whole backstage thing, the behind the scenes with a band, and you see those kind of private moments and those personal moments. And especially as we had the plays, it was just the best, the band are contained in it. Yeah. And so it was a brilliant book to do, subject matter. It was just, you didn't ever have to stop shooting. I was just loving every single minute of those tours. But we did the 2016 tour on a 747, and that's still, that would be good to put in a book. And
I mean, I was going to say, like, that was 2011, and that was from the Summer Back in Time. And did it include Final Frontier tour? The book?
It did.
It did.
Yeah, it did. Final Frontier. It was 4 years. So it was Somewhere Back in Time and the Final Frontier. So it was 2008 to 2011. Yeah. So
you shot so much more afterwards. I mean, obviously, all of the, like, and I can only imagine the quantity of material that you have on your hard drives at home.
Oh, it's insane. It really is insane. I mean, a lot of it is backed up as well online. So and it's quite nice. I've got this really good server where everything is kind of, not everything, but most stuff is contained on there. And I can be wherever in the world or in a pub, and someone calls me and says, "Have you got this shot?" And I can access my back catalogue from my phone.
That's
I can get
fantastic.
into the server. And it's just amazing. And I can scroll through galleries and go, there it is. You know,
It brings memories.
Bruce fencing in Sao Paulo. I'm sending you the link now, you know.
Amazing.
But any aspiring photographers that are listening, you know, that is one of the things. Just value your archive. Just look after your archive. Get organized. Get it online. And, you know, we were talking about how to make money. You know, if you've got access to your archive and you know where pictures are, you know, you can sell stuff. You know, so when a picture editor needs something or a website needs something, if you can access that quickly, you know, that's good business. And, you know, and with the archive, I'm now, you know, I do a lot of limited edition prints, but I'm doing sort of box sets. So, which is really nice. It's normally like a dozen prints contained in a box, and it's just, you know, highlights of a band's career, you know, and we do these things. I'm doing a My Chemical Romance one at the moment. So
wow.
It's, I've just spent the last sort of 48 hours picture editing for that, and I'll be taking those to get printed this week in Sussex.
So what is it going to be, like a box, and then inside this box there will be like 12 different...
Yeah, it's these beautiful sort of just A4 box, thin box, and these absolutely beautiful archival sort of prints. These ones are A4, but I normally do big 30-inch prints and all the rest of it. But these box sets are really nice. They're a kind of gift for the fans, really. They're designed to, when you open them, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, this is behind the scenes, and this is a portrait that's never been published. And they're really nice. They're put together with a lot of love. So, but this My Chemical Romance one, I've been receiving a lot of messages from the fan base asking for certain shots and things. So I'm thinking, well, you know, I might as well put one together. It should be really nice. But if you're going to do something, you want to do it really, really well.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Royal Mail stamps from Maiden. That was. I mean, that is something really, really well made, because I mean, I can only imagine that it might be quite difficult to put it on a stamp, like a good picture, you know.
I mean, that was insane, because we had. I think I'd got the heads up about that, and at the time it was kind of, it might happen, it might not happen, and I was thinking, there's no way they're going to put Steve Harris on a first class stamp, and they did. It was so good. But the gallery I put together for Royal Mail, we must have had about 700 shots for consideration for that.
Wow.
And it was kind of, you know, and you had to look at them in thumbnail. It was like, you know, is this going to work in a thumbnail size, because it's a stamp, you know. So there were a lot of shots I'd kind of pulled out that thought, oh my God, this would be an amazing stamp. And then you kind of looked at it as a thumbnail and said, well, it's not really going to work, is it? It could be anything, you know, from that distance. So, yeah, that was good fun, that. And I think that was such an honor, wasn't it, for the band to be
yeah, because there aren't that many British acts that got that. I mean, like, I think the Beatles, Queen, Bowie, I think. Who else? I mean, there aren't that many. So for Maiden, Pink Floyd,
Queen,
Elton John,
And I think Iron Maiden have opened the floodgates for the metalwork, because I think AC/DC are.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Series of stamps, which is epic, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Very, very cool. I mean, I love that. I got the other day, actually, there was a couple of sets that came with a coin. And I just got it on eBay. It was so cheap, and I was like, how come I haven't seen this before? And when it arrived, it's so beautiful. It's like very nicely packaged, and I mean, it's really well made, honestly. It's really well made,
really good product,
great quality, great product. Absolutely. John, let me move a little bit now into a few other, what I call like some kind of like roller coaster questions for you, my friends. Do you have yourself or follow any morning routines, rituals, or try to follow anything like that?
No, I'm a real night owl. I really am. Drives my wife crazy. It's just kind of sort of, I am a night owl. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I'm not an early riser, to be honest. I'm not that late a riser, but it's, no. No, there isn't. Normally, when a tour is coming imminent, I will start doing a lot of long walks, cycling, swimming, and just try and get myself in a bit of a fitter stage than I sometimes am when I'm sort of not on tour and stuff. Because there's been a few tours where I've gone out and I've shot the first couple of shows and just thought, geez, this is going to kill me. It's 2.5 hours carrying a really heavy load of camera equipment and all the rest of it. So I try and make a point to get fitter before a tour comes. Otherwise, I have Jeff in security whacking me in the stomach again, putting on a few pounds. Aren't you? That's my benchmark for whether I'm sort of No, I'm a night out. I really am, and I'm more creative late at night as well, as far as sort of ideas and editing and photography wise. It's kind of when I come alive.
Cool. What do you have any subjects that you enjoy exploring outside of mainly photography and music that we've just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, music is a big part, but that goes hand in hand, really, doesn't it, with what I do? But I do still play guitar. I still record a lot.
That's cool. I didn't know about that. That is cool.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough that I've got a few friends that are quite respected session musicians. So if I need a drummer, we've got a couple of things that we get together occasionally and jam, and we do a lot of recording online. Just sending stem files to each other, and then I'll get the live recording of drums back and stuff. It's really good. It's all quite sort of. I don't know, it's quite sort of not jazz fusion, because I'm not that great a guitarist. I'm an okay guitar player, but it's quite sort of, it's a bit Pink Floydy, it's a bit sort of 70s, it's a bit, it's good stuff though. Yeah, and that sort of keeps me busy. And I spend a lot of time in Cornwall, sea fishing, do a bit of sea fishing and stuff. And play a lot of poker. So,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. During the pandemic, we started the heavy metal poker club. And it's just brilliant. We had like sort of Scotty Ian helped, and and there was a lot of roadies and a lot of sound engineers, and it was really good. And we were playing. There was up to about 50 players each week in the end on various tables, and we did a whole world championship with a tankard that was engraved, and we've got that.
That's cool.
Yeah, we've got that starting up again in the next sort of month or so. That's live on PokerStars every Wednesday nights at 9. So, Heavy Metal Poker Club. Find us on Facebook and message.
Oh, really? That's cool. I'm gonna check it out.
I'll send you the links, but it's cool. Yeah, it's really good.
How was that period for you? I mean, COVID, like that when everything shut down and like. I mean, obviously, there was nothing that you could do in your line of work. So how was that period for you?
Well, it's 5 years to the week, isn't it?
I know. It's crazy, yeah.
I remember taking a shower, and I remember standing in the shower, and I was thinking, well, that's, everything's fucked. Maiden's cancelled. That's not going to happen. And thinking, how much have I got in my bank account? Because the mortgage repayments didn't stop.
Of course.
Still went on in that sense. But I vividly remember it being quite a good time for the family. We all just battened down the hatches. It was like Christmas, we bought a lot of good food, and I quite enjoyed it the first few weeks. And then I started thinking, well, I need to work out how to make a living during this. And that's when I kind of ramped up the limited edition prints, and that has been really, really, really good.
Oh, so that worked out really well during the period.
Yeah. I mean, that was how I survived. Yeah, I've got a good buddy called Rue out in Sussex that runs a pro sort of printing place. He specialises in fine art printing, and we've been friends for like 25 years. And he was still working during that period, and he was brilliant because I was saying, look, if we're going to do this, they've got to be like fucking amazing, we need these amazing papers. So can you get samples of all the best papers that you can? And we had like titanium paper stock and 100% cotton and pearl fiber, And all these different ones we did test prints on, and live shots worked great on pearl fiber. You know, black and whites looked amazing on titanium, and portraits looked good on 100% cotton. It was brilliant. So, you know, I had a really good, unique selling point with the prints, that it was like, you know, Japanese market really sort of, I did a lot of baby metal prints.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these were portraits done on 100% cotton paper. And they were just stunning, absolutely stunning prints. So, you know, hand on heart, when somebody pays £100 for a limited edition print and it's numbered and it's signed, they're going to get something really, really beautiful, you know. And so that's how I survived. Yeah, and it was during that period we kind of ramped up, and yeah, it's been good. There's a whole range of Legacy of the Beast prints.
Yeah, the ones that you brought me to the Barbican, man, wow!
Yes.
I mean,
Steve Harris one is insane.
It's insane. That's insane. I mean, I'm gonna frame that, but it's gonna be like, I need to actually get it properly done. Go to a place where they will offer me a good frame and like a good, nice glass, something, you know, protective again. I don't know if there's any type of framing glass that protects against light, I suppose, because it's something
yeah, I mean, these are archival prints, so they won't fade for like 200 years.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a process they call Gisli. It's basically the print machine has inks in it that are UV resistant and will not fade. They're guaranteed not to fade.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
200 years. So, and the papers are acid free, so they can't produce molds or rot. But as far as framing, you just want to keep the print off the glass. That's why you want a sort of card mount to just give a tiny bit of separation to, because if there is condensation on the glass,
right, of course,
and it is going to damage the print. So that's why. Yeah, and you can get away with it in a dry household. You'll be absolutely fine. But if you've got any kind of humidity, you need to keep that print off the glass.
Very good point.
Yeah, that's the key to it.
Amazing. John, what do you do to unwind? What's the perfect lazy day on your books?
Oh man, is kayaking in Cornwall. With either a fishing rod or a good book, and it's just, you wouldn't want to do or be anywhere else in the world. It's so beautiful. There's little sort of estuaries that run off. We're right by the sea, but on the estuary mouth, there's little kind of rivers that run off, and you can just lose yourself for a day in a kayak. It's brilliant. On a beautiful day, you can just tie off and read a book and just have a beer, and it's just that's probably the best way to sort of totally chill out and unwind. But I also found, coming back from touring, you know, when you come back and you expect everything to be the way it was in your household, and it never is, because you've been, you know, away for a while. And so we started, you know, I'd come back from a tour and we would disappear to Cornwall, my wife, and I've got 2 sons, and as a unit we'd go somewhere new, instead of me just coming into the household going, hey, I'm home, you know. I would come home, dump all my gear, and then we would all collectively escape to Cornwall. And that was a really refreshing way of all of us being refreshed from, you know, not having seen each other and what have you. Yeah, I can recommend that. But
that's really cool. I mean, honestly, what you just said now, it's very I'm always very careful on talking about people's families and asking questions about it, but what you just described, it's such a clever way to, because obviously this existence of ours, it's very difficult for family members, in particular a wife or you know, kids and people like that, to understand, you know, because you go for long chunks of period of time away, and things, like you said, they I mean, you come back and things, they change, or things happen. And
I mean, and it's not just the surroundings, it's kind of you change sometimes. You know, I mean, I don't tour as, you know, the big tours as long as, say, you do. You know, lately with Maiden, because we don't have the plane, so it isn't as critical to photograph every element of it. You know, I'll come in on blocks, so I'll do a block of 2 weeks and go away and then come back for big shows and stuff. And that's quite nice, you know, for your mental health and, you know, your general health. But when, the longest I've done was about nearly 3 months. And I remember that being really tough, you know, coming back. And a lot was different in the house in 3 months. You know, my wife was like, right, we're getting rid of this, we're getting rid of that. You know, that really worked for us, you know, just going away as a unit down to Cornwall, and it was all refreshing, all new for us, you know, and it's like we're all away, you know. So when we returned to the home, we're all coming back home instead of just me coming in and slinging my bags down, you know.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
that was a good way of doing it. But lately it hasn't been too bad, you know. I'll only go away for like 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, and it's that's the perfect amount of time, really. I mean, when you go away for like 2-3 weeks, 4 at most, and then you have a couple of months home, and then you go out again, and the long stretches are definitely quite challenging in every aspect of it, because just being on the road for so many like weeks and eventually months, it's just your perception of reality changes so much, you know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You never know what day of the week it is, do you? You know, you don't know it's a weekend sometimes. It's like, oh, is it a Saturday? You know, you're just lost in your own world. Enjoying. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. It's just incredible. I love it. But you are just lost down that rabbit hole, aren't you? Of whatever band you're with.
Absolutely. John, want to be mindful of your time, so I want to ask you one last question here. If you could have dinner with anyone, leaving your dad, who would you pick?
Oh wow, probably Iggy Pop. He's the one person that I haven't photographed, you know, done a portrait with. You know, I'd love to persuade him that, you know, it'd be really cool to do a portrait session with you wearing a dress in the middle of Manhattan or something, you know.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I would love that. But yeah, Iggy Pop, I've always found he's a really interesting person. You know, someone who's he was just absolutely bonkers, wasn't he, back in the day?
Oh, he was. He still is. I mean, if you see his Instagram account, you know.
Is it? Yeah, with a parrot, isn't it?
He's such a funny character still at that age.
But he's so brilliant. I mean, he must have upset so many people. You know, but I'd love to hear some stories from him. I'm a big fan of John Lydon, Sex Pistols. I think he's an interesting guy. He's quite intelligent, isn't he? Did you meet Lemmy ever? Lemmy was.
I did.
Yeah? I did. Such a sweet guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I mean, honestly, I've had the privilege to meet him a couple of times. Once, the first time I met him was actually at the Astoria Theatre, the good old Astoria Theatre. Yeah,
man. I love that place.
Yeah, that place used to. I mean, that whole area used to be so good. You have the Astoria Theatre, you have the Mint Fiddler, Denmark Street with 12 Bar and Tin Pan Alley.
It's all gone.
It's all gone.
Soho was the best. You know, when I first started working for Metal Hammer magazine, it was just the best times, because we were at the Astoria, as you say, you know, the Mint Fiddler, 12 Bar, the Greek Theatre, I think it is. It was just, and there were bars everywhere, and everyone was everywhere. The Crowbar was there, wasn't it? And it was just the best times ever. You know, when I started at Metal Hammer, it was the whole new metal thing. So new metal had just taken off. And, you know, after shows, we would take like Papa Roach and Wes from Limp Bizkit to various bars. And it was just Machine Head. You know, it was just the best times, because there was always something happening. So, you know, if a band said, you know, we're not traveling out tonight, we're going to be around, what's happening? You go, oh, go here. And everyone would, you know, it was great. Yeah, really, really good times.
Did you get to photograph any shows at the good old Marquee Club?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. The most memorable was, I remember shooting Man of War. This was when I was doing my apprentice. You know?
Seriously, Man of War at the Marquee Club? Man of War
at the Marquee. And I remember it being so fucking loud that I was chewing receipts, paper receipts that were in my pocket, to get them soft enough that I could cram in my ears. Because I remember my eyeballs were vibrating. It was so fucking loud. Yeah, and I used to follow Wolfsbane around as well before I started working professionally, and I'd shoot their shows. And
oh, wow.
They played at the Marquee a lot. So, and it was brilliant. And it's so bizarre that a brand as good as that, nobody has, you know, whoever's got the rights is obviously holding on to it. But, you know, you open a Marquee in Soho now, it would be absolutely swamped, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah.
And
But like,
it's lofts now, that building. It's crazy.
Yeah, they did a version of it in Islington that was it was kind of Islington Academy, I think, was the marquee for a bit, and it just wasn't the marquee. You know, you need that dive bar feel about it, not a gig in a shopping centre. You know, that's how.
That's one of the things for me that I'm really gutted about, the fact that Denmark Street is completely it's gone. And then all of those clubs and venues completely gone, and people that walk up and down Charing Cross Road these days have no idea.
They have no idea how cool it was. And if you think about, you liking it to New York, you want all the gigs in the heart of sort of Manhattan, don't you? And that's what the West End is. The West End is the heart of London. It's where all the theatres are for the, musicals and what have you. But it was the kind of heartbeat of London. And that whole scene, I don't know how it's happened, but the gentrification of that and the amount of rebuilding in Soho. I mean, I look back on old photo shoots and, you could shoot anywhere in Soho, around the back of the Astoria, and it's just like beautiful old streets. Some of it is still there. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of it is still there, but the majority isn't. And as you say, all the big, great clubs and bars have gone, which is just criminal. It needs to come back because you've just got Brixton in the south or the Forum in the north. Or you have to go east to go to the O2, which is insane. Or Wembley. So we need a big show. We need a big gig and a few more clubs back in the West End. So hopefully it'll happen. But
hopefully, but I mean, at the pace that things are going, I mean, the scenario is not looking that bright. It's very unfortunate. I mean, I have very strong feelings in regards to all of that, because for me to move to London on its first place, that was everything that happened in regards to music from the 60s onwards in this country, that and we don't have any mention of it. Nobody knows what happened.
Crazy.
And it's part of the cultural history of this country, of the amazing acts, the amazing bands, and the uncomparable artists that walked up and down that street, that recorded at the good old Regent's studio on Denmark Street as well. It's just unbelievable. And it's quite sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, Tin Pan Alley, Denmark Street, there's still guitar shops there, but I think they're hanging on.
Yeah,
they're only just hanging on in there. I'm sure they own the properties, and that's how they do it. It's like...
but then again, that's gonna go. They're literally just hanging on. There's like a handful of those left, but that street is completely like what used to be like the last incarnation of the Intrepid Fox. They used to be at the very end of Denmark Street, or beginning of Denmark Street, if you will. Like 14 years ago, it was there was still a scene. You had the Crowbar and Borderline.
I mean, the Crowbar, that was criminal, wasn't it? I mean, that was the rates and the rents went up. I know Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, I think. They got offered to buy it years and years ago, and they didn't, I don't think. And the rent on that is insane. I know the exact figure, but I can't really say it out loud on here. But it's like, it's insane how these places stay open with the rents that they're being charged. And music is the heartbeat of the city. It should be subsidised. It keeps it all in work, doesn't it? As well.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know, like nowadays with like, even in Camden, I live here in Camden, and the number of there's no more places to play here. The grassroots venues are all closing down. There's no scene. It's very unfortunate. I think for people that love music like we do, and rock and metal, I think we did get to live a very special moment in the human existence. When it comes to music, we did get to witness, and we still are witnessing a lot of great stuff. But
definitely. Definitely.
but like looking back on what music used to be before the 50s, before rock and roll really started, and what the scenario is towards the future now, it's just like, wow, okay, it's literally this window of time of 60 years, basically, that
Yeah.
so much has happened, and we did get to experience all of that. But
Yeah.
I don't.
But you're in the right place, Camden. I mean, Camden's still got the electric ballroom, the roundhouse.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Dublin Castle's still there. You're in the right place for, grassroots music.
Yeah, there's the Dean Walls as well, the Underworld.
Yeah.
I mean, Camden is definitely.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot going on here, but
I would say it's unique in the rest of London.
It is unique. It is 100%.
But you're totally right. I remember feeling, I wouldn't say privileged because I was quite young at the time. I was like 21, 22. But when I working for Metal Hammer and having all of that happening, and it being such a social scene, I had such a good social life during those early years of Metal Hammer. It was incredible. Yeah, we were very lucky indeed.
Very lucky, very lucky. John, brother, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I mean, the conversation was absolutely wonderful, man. And as expected, I did get to know you a little bit better, and that's always great. I love, developing and evolving relationships with people that are great at what they do. They're great people as people, and you are one of those. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks for accepting my invitation, and I hope to see you soon, my friend.
Yeah, you too, man. You too. It's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. And we'll definitely see you soon. And I'll come backstage and annoy your world.
You are invited into my world.
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome.
And
thank you.
I look forward to seeing you maybe at Maiden.
Probably in June.
Months.
I'm going away next week. I'm off to Brazil for a couple of weeks, and then I'm off. I'm doing a big tour in South America, and then I'm off to Japan, and then from Japan I'm going to be back in London just in time for London Stadium.
Epic. Well, enjoy Japan. It's one of my favourite places in the world. You have a great time.
Amazing.
Okay, Carl.
Cheers. Speak to you soon, John.
Thanks, buddy.
You. Cheers.
See you soon. Bye, mate.
Bye. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, this podcast, as much as I did doing it. So if that's the case, please do follow on Instagram at rollercoastercarl, myself at Carl Casagrande, on Twitter, same thing, Facebook, same thing. Do subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Spotify. That's very, very much appreciated. Thank you, and have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.